Hello everyone, my name is Mark Orszewski. I'm with Moving Worlds. I see a few Moving Worlds Institute fellows on the line here as well, so great to see you all. Otherwise, quite a number of new faces and new names, which is also very exciting to see. I'm joined here by Yvonne, who you'll also see in the video box here. Yvonne's with Catalyst 2030, and I'll give her a space to introduce herself in just a moment. But I'm just going to start off. We kind of kicked off with this little word cloud here. In the word cloud, for those of you that just joined, then you are welcome to see if you can just sneak in a word here. Otherwise, quick kind of read here. It seems like optimistic has been the most frequented word. Although I'm going to go ahead and say that the supercalifragilistic expialidocious is my favorite, and I'm going to give you like a 93%, 94% on the spelling there. So nicely done. No easy task. I'm going to go ahead and you'll see that we'll be jumping screens a few times here. But I'm going to go ahead and start introducing the session. And in the meantime, as some of you are already doing, please do use the chat box to connect with each other, share your meal du jour, connect, support, whatever it might be. So today's session is hosted in partnership with Catalyst 2030, and this has been part of a catalyzing change movement as part of a COVID response and recovery effort. And there has been a whole series of talks today. For those of you who didn't actually see the entire page, I'll actually jump ship and share that screen very briefly. So you can always go back and see this later. But here on the Catalyst 2030 page, you can see that there's been a whole host of sessions today. This has been the second. We hope there will be more in the future. And so Yvonne, maybe I can hand it over to you and you can give us a quick little introduction on behalf of Catalyst 2030.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, as Mark already said, I am from the Catalyst team. I'm with Catalyst 2030, but also from One Family Foundation, currently the Secretariat of Catalyst. Catalyst is a movement that has been existing now for, I think, about a year. It was launched at the World Economic Forum in January in 2020. And it's a global community of social entrepreneurs, funders, and other social change innovators, which do believe that collective action and bold new strategies are needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. We are leading social entrepreneurs from Ashoka, Echo & Green, the Schwab Foundation, and the Skoll Foundation, and other global networks. And our aim is then to accelerate the progress of the SDG. As the COVID started erupting across the world, we set up a catalyzing change campaign that was conceptualized by members from across the network with the aim of sharing how social innovators are responding to COVID-19, trying to form new collaborative partnerships to accelerate social change, co-creating policy recommendations based on expertise of the social innovators, and also we're initiating dialogue with policymaker, funders, and leaders across the sector. So kind of the aim of this whole campaign is that the key learnings from what's coming up from each session will be compiled into a document that will be shared with the UN Deputy Secretary General, heads of states, and other concerned key political people who can help leverage the expertise from the social entrepreneurs by proposing scalable solution and policy recommendation. So that's kind of the aim, and this is the third round out of 4 rounds of the campaign. For the last round, our goal is to have a complete report that we will be sharing with these key stakeholders to present kind of which policy recommendations and shovel-ready solutions social entrepreneurs are coming up with, and then kind of take it forward for the high-level political forum. So that's just shortly about it. And if you're more interested in learning about Catalyst, I will drop my I will drop the email down in the chat box and you can reach out directly to us. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks for hosting us. Thanks for making this happen. Excited to be a part of it. So as we get going here, similar to Yvonne, she'll have her chat box afterwards. You're also welcome to connect with me as well. My detail here, marketmovingworlds.org. Of course, you can always follow us at Experteering. The organization that I'm with is called Moving Worlds. Really quick high level of what Moving Worlds does is we invest in professionals. We are lucky enough to be able to support a global network of professionals that are looking to create more impact through their careers, both through learning, through cohort support, and then through a stretch social impact project. We also partner directly with social enterprises, providing capacity building support through education programs, a new initiative that we are launching called S-Grid, which I'll highlight briefly at the end of the presentation. And then as well as helping them access pro bono support around the world. And then we also connect and partner directly with corporations in helping them develop programs that can engage their employees for the sake of scaling social impact. And that's been everything from internal innovation and scorecarding to external work with giving of both employee time as well as corporate resources. But for today's session, we're going to talk a little bit more about what we really see as the big opportunity, right? And this was even before COVID, but has become even more pronounced now, which is that to combine a couple of quotes for Paul Pullman here, is to say that there's no business case for enduring poverty or runaway climate change. And there's a great business opportunity if we seize it to help harness markets and all the financial, human, and innovative capital they represent to deliver the world that we want. It's a minimum of a $12 trillion market opportunity and could create 380 million more jobs. It's the biggest business plan opportunity of all time, and it's worth going for. Consumers will demand it, employees will leave without it, and governments will eventually require it. And I think this is a nod to say that the current economy, or both the pre-COVID economy as well as the COVID economy, isn't necessarily sustainable. And in fact, it creates gross inequalities and rapid environmental degradation. And what is the way through that? When at the same time, capitalism as a market has pulled more people out of poverty than any other single initiative. And so what we've seen, and I'll even share a story, I think, to make this more real, is one of our corporate partners was sharing that every year when they get into sustainability planning, they do a survey of social enterprises. They go to smaller artisans, they go to fabric harvesters, they go to farmers, and they look for more organic, sustainable, and traceable content that they can pull into. They are a manufacturer primarily known for their shoes, but also other products. And every year they bump into the same challenge, which is, even though we are trying, we actually aren't able to achieve the type of supply on a consistent basis from social enterprises that we need in order to actually plug them into our supply chain to meet consumer demand. And I'm sure many of you have seen this too with new Kickstarter campaigns of promising, fabulous products made from recycled materials, or new services that are pulling people from certain communities, and you see these are being shipped behind schedule, or maybe grossly delayed, or even not at all. And it's oftentimes because there isn't enough capacity within those social enterprises to meet the consumer demands for these products. So on one side, we have corporations that to some degree are investing. I'll be the first to say they're not doing enough, they're not doing fast enough, and they've waited too long. However, there are indeed champions within them that are trying to do more, and it becomes very challenging for them. Now, on the flip side, we have social enterprises that are often the ones that are creating those innovations along the first and last miles, that are creating the business model innovations, product innovations, and others to actually create a more regenerative economy. And the question is, how do we help bridge this gap? Right? How do we help companies do more to pull over towards social enterprises, but how do we also help social enterprises work across this gap as well? Now, the corporations here, as single entities, are massive levers, and a lot of work needs to be done there. That's a separate conversation for a separate time. Today's conversation is going to focus around social enterprises. How do we help upskill social enterprises to seize and realize this market opportunity? That's not an easy question, but hopefully today, with some of your help, we'll at least brainstorm a couple ideas. Now, the way that we're going to do that is we already completed an introduction. We are going to use Mural. That's a tool. I know some of you on the call are familiar. Hopefully this elicits a positive reaction for anybody of you doing a facepalm right now. I understand. It's getting better as time goes on, but we're trying to do the most given our virtual engagements here. And then we're going to define the problem. So where do social enterprises struggle to reach this gap, to connect into companies? Where are the opportunities? Where can social enterprises connect and find new opportunities? And then how can we improve our support? What can we do individually to maybe start making some movements? Now, given time and all of yours feedback, it might be 5 might be more the start of a conversation or a seed to plant, but we'll see where we can get to. So what we're going to start with is a mural test. Now, let's see. For those of you that are Zoom experts here, anybody can anybody add a Zoom reaction, a thumbs up? I'll even take a clap on your profiles here if you've used Mural before. Some of you I'll call out too, because I know you have. Cool. Okay. So a couple new, couple experience. Let me show just a quick demo of what we're getting into. So give me a second. My screen should shift over, and you should now be seeing a Mural screen. So everybody, welcome to Mural. If this is your first time here, this is a happy place. You can think about this as a big, fun, creative virtual whiteboard. It's not without its obstacles. We're still in virtual tech world, but it's better than nothing. So over the course of today, we're going to actually hit on 4 different Mural sections, but we're going to start with this one, which is going to be trying out Mural. We're going to do an experiment around mapping value. What I mean by that is we're just going to do a quick exploration just so we're all on the same page, that when I say a value chain or a distribution chain or a supply chain, we're going to clump these into the idea of a value chain. And we're going to do that with a beverage that everybody might not drink, but I think at least around the world, we're quite familiar with as a concept. So in talking about coffee, right? Coffee as a value chain is farmed, it gets processed, it gets transported, gets roasted, and then it gets retailed and eventually consumed by consumers. Now, sometimes you might see some changes in this, but for the most part, this is consistent for coffee. Now, what I'm going to do as we experiment here with Mural is I'm going to ask for your help to help me think of actual businesses. Like, what are the names of actual businesses that exist in these different groups? Some of you might know by name. You might say, oh, roasting, Starbucks, right? So you might add Starbucks here. In just a second, I'll show you how to actually add Starbucks here. And then in tandem, if you don't know the name, but you know an entity, right? You could just say, oh, a big roaster, oh, a big food company, or in transportation, maybe you don't, we list UPS and you don't remember the others, so you can say global distributors. Now, the way that you play in Mural here, and in just a second, I'll give you a link that you can join me, is this is a canvas. It's locked, so you shouldn't be able to do anything other than move the screen around. But if you double click in these sections, a sticky note will appear. And just, you can imagine this like a little sticky that, well, at least I have lying around me at all times. And you'll add something here, right? So you can add, a farmer. And then you'll click, and then you got another idea, you just double click, and this section will actually keep expanding. So that's it. Go to a box, double click, sticky opens, add a note. Should be relatively simple. If for some reason the double clicking doesn't work, if you come over here on the side, you can actually grab a sticky note and drag it in. And then if you're really picky about color, you can also click on it and you can change the color of your sticky, but starting to get a little advanced there. So I'm going to go ahead and in the chat box here, in any second, if I can find my chat box, you'll see a link to join me here in Mural Land. So I'm still sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see Mural with me. Perfect. We now have an anonymous cow, cat, koala, a rabbit. So you're joining here. And if you will, help me think of different names by business or by groups that exist in these different value chains. Cool. So someone's added migrant workers into farming. That's exactly right. These are the types of ideas that we're looking for. Different entities. I will accept the cows. I'll accept names. We've got Costco. Wholesalers. Yep. Cool. So now that everybody's going there, I'm going to start a timer for maybe just like 30 seconds here. What's more important here is that we've got people kind of clicking around in Mural more so than we have the best value chain ever created for coffee. And for those of you that maybe missed it, in the chat box is the link to the Mural screen. So if you click on that, it will click you over. If you are on a mobile device, a smaller mobile device, it's a little bit harder to work here. It'll probably prompt you to join in, to download an app. So apologies for that. Cool. Well, our time is up. I see we've got maybe not everybody joining me in Mural Land, but enough to at least kind of be here and hanging out and helping us. And indeed, this is a value chain, right? And one of the reasons that we start this exercise with thinking about a value chain is I can share a story that happens to me about once a week, where some social enterprise that is within the moving networks emails us and says, hey, can you give me an introduction to GSK? Can you give me an introduction to Microsoft? Can you give me an introduction to Gucci, fill in the blank? And I'm quite shameless. I'm happy to pass on a recommendation for anybody within our network to organizations. But what we see is those introductions typically don't match to much, right? Use the example of one that will actually be in our case study a little bit later. But it was a group that was collecting ocean plastics, right? And this group, Ocean Plastics, they're looking for a connection into some high fashion companies to help high fashion companies make things out of, well, ocean plastics. It's a good idea. We're starting to see some of that in the press. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the reality is the buyers within these entities, similar to the other organization, the business I was talking about at the intro of the webinar, is that they require a certain type of material at a certain quantity, at a certain consistency. And it's really hard for smaller social enterprises to achieve that. And what we see all too often in social enterprises is they get turned down by some of the big international brands, and then they forget what to do. Or they just stop. They say, that model didn't work. When in reality, they can move down this value chain and maybe find there are different types of businesses within it that they can plug into and support. And for them, it's a matter of how. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen away from Mural. For those of you that are still in Mural, you are welcome to keep playing around there. But what Moving Worlds believes, and I think in fact what we're seeing, is that these types of partnerships actually will be the new normal. We will see more corporations partnering with companies. Adidas Stella McCartney line partnered with New Cycle, which is a novel technology to recycle cotton from jeans and turn that into fabric. Products, iPhone case just being one example, but there's many of these that are new types of devices made from ocean plastics. Timberland, who's partnered with smallholder farmer alliances to create sustainable cotton industry, and in the process of doing that led major reforestation efforts as a way to also help create more income opportunities for the farmers as part of their supply chain. Mawingu Networks here in the bottom right corner, a group that has partnered here with Microsoft, the founder of Mawingu and the CEO of Microsoft, together here photoed, who have partnered to help create mobile Wi-Fi spots in rural and disconnected communities across the African continent. So stories like this are becoming increasingly popular, and we think that there are going to be more and more of them. However, it's not easy. Connecting smaller mission-first social enterprises with profit-driven corporations isn't always a natural match. So the question is, well, how can we help social enterprises, and where do social enterprises struggle to connect into the sector? So for that, we're going to turn back to Mural. We are going to define the problem. So let me first give you a quick tour in the next section in Mural. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to zoom out from this view, and I'm going to move up here into define a problem, is what is hard about selling into the corporate sector. And this is where I could use your help again. I'll ask you, here's for anybody that's left, you can click on that chat box. You'll end up directly in this section. What I'll ask you to do is join here. You can double click anywhere within this section. You'll add a sticky note. And on those sticky notes, I want you to just add any problem that you can think of. What is hard about selling into the corporate sector, especially for social enterprises? So I'll give like maybe a minute here so we can start to get some ideas. And for anybody that's having trouble in Mural, feel free to also use the chat box. You can just chat some to me, and Yvonne or I will be your scribes. We'll carry those over for us. Cool. Thanks, Tara. I carried that over for us. Okay, so our timer is up. If any of you want to keep adding ideas, feel free. But what I'm going to do, still sharing my screen here, is what we're going to do is start grouping some of these ideas together. Like what are some of the kind of common themes that we tend to see here? Now, I have created a few buckets here that I normally see. Oops. Sorry about the screen change there. There we go. That I normally see, and we'll see if most of these ideas tend to fall into this. So finding someone to talk to, I'm going to pull that into this right customer, right buyer, right? Let's see, network and power. This could be a couple things. I could see this both on like customer success side. It could also be like, do you have the right connections? And can, so often we see, companies with bigger entities, they have the money, it's a little bit harder. Selling the idea of social good, I'm going to put that into right customer, right buyer. Very easy to find companies, hard to find the people within them who actually champion the cause. Short-term investment, not long-term partnership. That could mean a couple things. So I'm going to maybe just leave that here for now. No formal partnership. I'm going to put that into effective operations and customer successes. Can you actually get something into a more formal partnership? I'll put short-term there as well. These might not be perfect. Understand the language of each corporation and what their needs are. I'm going to put that into an effective sales process. Oftentimes we hear social enterprises, they'll sell what they do. They're not always great at translating that into solving a problem for the company. So just getting in your foot in the door, I'll add that to right customer, right buyer. Let's see, aligning values with corp, put that into, we could put that over here in effective operations. Somebody could easily argue the case for another one, and I would probably agree with them. I'm gonna put the ensuring ROI here as well. I'll add connections into right customer, right buyer, financing orders, put that into customer success. They don't have enough liquidity to scale to meet that demand. That's definitely a very real challenge. Working through all the stakeholders of a corporation. For anybody that's been involved in these sales processes, you know, it's like, I have to talk to multiple entities. How do I get them? How do I get them all? And then don't have enough human resources. Oh, that's interesting. That one's still being grabbed, so I can't move that one. So this is just as like an initial harvest, right? A lot of these really resonate, right? Here we go. I'll move that one. Thank you, whoever was on that. I don't know if that was the anonymous. Might have been the anonymous sea lion. Whoever you are, thank you. You're doing a wonderful job. So I'm gonna go ahead and share back into presentation mode here. And you know, these aren't the only themes, but they're the ones at least that we see the most, right? Which is that social enterprises struggle with product market fit. They have a product, but they haven't yet translated that to how it solves a hole in the value chain. And that's the question to answer is, how can social enterprises stop saying, I collect trash from oceans and turn that into a value proposition that a company might be interested in, right? Which might be someone in design within Adidas who says, I need inspiration to help develop new products. Or it might be a smaller manufacturer that needs plastic waste to turn into fiber that can then make it into the supply chain. So we need to figure out who exactly are the different audiences that we solve a problem for, and then we sell to it. So that's product market fit. The other one is getting to yes. So it's instilling business development best practices, right? So as we saw in our Mural brainstorm, we saw one of the issues is that, like, well, there's many different stakeholders. How do I find the right one? How do I find someone that actually cares about social impact, who would be willing to take a bigger risk or champion this cause? And that's a challenge, right? And there are business development best practices that are needed to do that. Typically, that also involves using a sales technology like a customer relationship management software. That is produced by, well, there's many. And then there's also delivering on the contract. So once there is a first sale, then, right, how do you actually deliver value and then capture the case study from that so that you can help create more sales opportunities? You know, I can tell you just from a personal experience that we had, we were running a program in Mexico City, got connected with a very cool social enterprise that was using refugee chefs as part of an upskilling and education tool to then provide the catering for the event that we were doing. We were willing to pay more for this service compared to other options. And the week of the event, they came back to us and said, oh, actually, you know, we actually don't have ovens, so we actually can't fulfill the order unless you're willing to pay a couple extra thousand more than the entire invoice order so far, to pay for their ovens. And stories like this are all too often in the social enterprise community, where there aren't enough examples and support and experience in showing how to improve operations to avoid those types of scenarios. And especially in the last minute. So these three areas are things that we often see moving worlds providing support to social enterprises, as well as our incredible network of expertise also contributing to support some of these cases. So then the question is, like, well, then how do social enterprises find the right buyer, right? So in the case, you know, of the social enterprise in Mexico that I was just mentioning, if they don't have an oven, should they be selling catering, right? Or could they actually be thinking, are there other people in the food delivery value chain that they could be partnering with, right? Could they be educating workers to help fill in other service industries or other restaurants, as opposed to trying to go direct to consumer? That's a model that needs validation. And so what we always recommend is going through a process of segmentation to just make sure that you have checked all the different options possible. And so what we're going to do next is really just look at one framework, and there are others, but one framework of how can you actually segment a value chain and identify opportunities for social enterprises. And in doing this, the hope is, of course, that a social enterprise will then match to not only a place where they can generate revenue from and therefore increase their own stability and achieve their mission, but that they can also create a longer term sustainable partnership together so that they can grow, plug into the value chain, and then use that, continue expanding and moving forward on their mission. Now, to do this, it's going to be a little bit easier if we talk about a mythical company. So mythical company here is Acme. Acme Company has developed an innovative way to capture ocean plastics. Okay, so on the left, gross ocean plastic. And local and national governments, as well as business and NGOs, deploy Acme products to collect plastics in nearby waters. Now, Acme has heard that big apparel companies like Adidas are creating shoes and clothes out of ocean plastics. Here over on the right is a picture of one of these shoes. It is an Adidas shoe made from fishing nets in the ocean. And Acme wants to start selling the plastic it captures to these big companies like Adidas, Puma, and others to generate more revenue and capture more plastic. And it thinks that its products will have upcycled plastic in the future. The question then becomes, where should it start? So to help, I will once again lean on all of your expertise. I'm going to reshare my mural screen here. I'm going to zoom out, and now we're going to go to the next section here, which is called mapping the value chain. So as a quick kind of summary here, for those of you, I will add the link here if you're not in here already, and I'll walk you through it quickly. Is we're going to start with the scenario and assignment is at the top. But what we're going to say is that similar to the coffee value chain that has these different stages, we're going to look at this value chain for social and for Acme. If they think about all the different ways that their know-how and their resources can add value to the value chain, there's product design, there's sourcing and manufacturing, there's packing and distribution, there's sales, and there is delivery. What I could use your help on is coming in here, double clicking and adding either a company name, right, that does something in this. So if you can think of it, right, you could add, oh, IDEO, they do product design. Or maybe you're not exactly sure of a name, but you're like, oh yeah, there's like a design agency that helps with these initiatives. So company names are great if you have them. If not, I will also take just general ideas. And so in the chat box here, you can go ahead and start sharing your ideas by double clicking and adding the different types of entities along this value chain. I'm gonna do a 30-second timer here. Or 1 minute and 30 seconds. So we'll get those ideas. And I'll start, for those of you not in Mural, I'll leave my screen sharing so you can see all the action, and I'll start reading some of these out. Cool, so we're still got about 15 seconds left. So go ahead and get your best idea up there. Cool. So ideas are still welcome, and I will take them as you want. But what you can see here is that if we zoom all the way out on this value chain, we can actually start to see that in between Acme company and the next enterprises that exist, and the customers that exist to buy some upcycled new cooler product made from recycled ocean plastics. There are many different entities, right? And if you really want to go into the value chain, it's actually even more complex than this. But what you see is that there's different entities, right? And so, maybe Acme, if they try and sell to Adidas and Puma, there's no way that they'll be able to get in the door there. Adidas and Puma have way too big of a supply that could possibly be collected by Acme. And not only that, Adidas doesn't know what to do with recycled ocean plastic, right? In fact, they often don't even own many of the manufacturing that are producing their products, right? So what, in this case, Acme needs to do is look downstream, where there's entities like DA.ai in Taiwan who takes recycled plastic or recaptured plastic and then turns that into fiber. Now, with that fiber, they then take that fiber and sell that to manufacturers. Manufacturers then partner with entities like Adidas and others to then create products, right? So there are ways for recycled ocean plastic to enter the supply chain, but it's probably not through Adidas and through Puma. And so the exercise here is to think about starting with just a big brainstorm of where are all the different entities. And as anybody on this call can imagine, I'm sure knows, and I really don't need to say it, is the way I would pitch Acme Company to a design agency is very, very different than the way that I would pitch Acme Company to a US-based manufacturer, right? Or to a sustainable retailer, right? And because we're working in social enterprise and because we actually see a increase in companies reporting on things like transparency and sustainability, what I'll also say is that there's this kind of new category emerging along entire value chains for groups that are measuring the sustainability and equity across all stages. If anybody has seen Patagonia and any of the work that they're doing, now oftentimes when you buy a product, you can actually see real photos, sometimes even live video feeds of the manufacturing plant where it was produced. And other entities like Starbucks are using blockchain to help trace the actual beans in bags of coffee all the way back to the farmers. And so you're seeing these entities that stretch across. And so social enterprises need to remember, and in fact, are probably more likely to succeed by kind of forgetting these big brands and instead looking at the value chain. And in those value chains, there's a whole inspiration of different ideas where an innovative company harvesting ocean plastic and having excess can find opportunities and ways to sell it. Maybe it's then creating interesting packing and distribution for the shoes. It's not even going into the shoes themselves. So this is what we talk about when we talk about mapping a value chain and where we see social enterprises start to have a lot more success. So a bit of a framework that we recommend in terms of processing that is for any value chain, right? For anything where revenue is then produced, what we encourage social enterprises is to think about in the design phase, right? Who are the different businesses there? Create a business model canvas for that business related to their own products and services, and then test the value proposition and key hypotheses. So what I mean by that is, let's say in product design, thinking back to what we were just showing in Mural, if Acme Company thinks that, oh, I could sell product design teams because I could give them tours of ocean plastic and we could host workshops with ocean, I'm making this up as we go here. I don't know if this is a real thing, but we can make up things with ocean plastic and we can see if there's a way, what part of the shoes could actually even be made from recycled fabric, and are there different types of ocean plastic better in different parts of shoes? If that's an idea, and it might be a stupid one, right? But if that's an idea, what they would do is create a business model canvas to explore what that would look like, to see if it's even remotely possible. And then to say, oh, well, in delivering this, I now understand my customer and we have a value proposition, right? We can offer something to product designers that nobody else can, which is cool design workshops with upcycled materials. And then they need to go out and validate that and say, does the market want that? Are there any product designers that even care? And there might not be any, but that is one area that we would look. The next place that we would look is sourcing and manufacturing. Same process. We would identify different businesses. So who are the different groups? Who are the processing plants that take plastic and turn it into something? Who are the groups that are actually doing the final assembly? And then same deal, create a business model canvas, test the value proposition for that. And then we think about the same thing for packaging and distribution, right? Are there groups either in making of the packages or in the distribution where this company, Acme, could add value? And then same process, business model, create and test value propositions. Then you look at sales and marketing partnerships, right? Maybe Acme can start certifying entities, right? Maybe its business model is actually quite different in how to bring that recycled plastic to market, but could help on the sales and marketing. And then of course, there's the delivery side. Now, Acme probably doesn't play in here. They're more on this side of the value chain, but other models like in service or delivery or food or consumer facing are play more over here. So this is kind of the process that we recommend. And then once an enterprise does this, and this is not an easy task, right? This is a novel amount of work, but it starts to build a rigor and a model within social enterprises to actually help them look at more closely where can we plug into value chains, where can we solve real problems for the market, and then because there's a market-based need for that problem, they can solve it, generate revenue, employ people, and help progress on their mission. So once this is done, then you see, okay, which ones are our highest potential target? Let's say for Acme, it's sourcing and manufacturing, then they should double down there. They should say, okay, let's focus all efforts. Let's forget about these other opportunities. Let's grow in this area that has the best opportunities for growth. Let's capture case studies. Let's turn that into our sales processes. Let's refine our messaging. Let's build up our sales team. Let's build up our sales processes and capture that market opportunity. So, now, the way that we support social enterprises is like, how can we do that better? Because this is not easy, right? This is a lot of work. This is a big task. And so what I'm going to do here is the formal presentation actually ends in a minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Mural, which will just kind of be like an open brainstorm for us. So I'm sharing my screen. And what I'll ask you to, even if you're logging off, is just really quick, like, share a sticky note, right? What's a support that social enterprises might need? So I'll invite you there in just a moment. Let's see. I think my screen is sharing on. Oops. So yeah, my screen is still sharing. So I'll ask you just to double click here and add a concept, add a thought here of the type of support that social enterprises need. Now, as that happens, I will, because I do want to respect the time here, I'll open it up for Q&A. We can talk. You can add more problems and we'll harvest there. But for anybody that is interested in this, please do stay in touch. My email is marketmovingworlds.org. Next month, we're launching a new program that's called SGRID, stands for the Sustainable Growth of Revenues for International Development. And it is available to social enterprises, no equity, no cost. It is sponsored by SAP with another global partnership network in place to provide more support to social enterprises. So if you work with or support or are in and want to be a part of helping social enterprises plug into value chains, we'd of course love to stay in touch. So with that, here is the link to the mural. I'm going to share the mural screen and do a quick harvest of what's there, and also just open it up for Q&A. We'll go until the hour. Technically, the formal session ends now, so if you do need to jump off, thank you for joining. Appreciate that. Appreciate your mural inputs. Thanks to Yvonne and the Catalyst 2030 team. But if anybody else wants to stay on, I'll hang out until the hour and do Q&A, which you can ask by either unmuting yourself or by throwing a message in the chat box. Cool. Would love thoughts on some of the challenges on the screen. So cool. So while I wait for other questions, I'll go ahead and start reading some of these and see what we get to. So, so some social enterprises do not have something to sell. Tips for us. I'm seeing if there's also on some of the other cards here, if there's a theme on those, and I can group those together. Yeah, what I would explore is like, so I'm making an assumption here, and by all means, feel free to clarify either in the chat or on the sticky note, or even unmute yourself. my assumption then is that the social enterprise is still making some type of impact, right? So some type of beneficiary there, right? And so there's either some type of insight that's known about a local community, or a specific product, or a specific environmental problem. What we would encourage then is to say, for what you know, like, do you have some type of asset, some knowledge, some resources that are useful to another entity, right? Where if I go to that entity and share resources, knowledge, connection, something, can it help that entity become more sustainable, right? So is it aligned with your mission, right? And does it also solve a problem for that entity, right? In that, does it also then create an opportunity for you to generate revenue through that partnership, right? So that's a little bit vague, but if you want to add more clarity, that's kind of my response there. Capacity, technical knowledge, and expertise. This is one area. Honestly, this is or here's a question in the text. So can you describe the fastest growing social enterprises sectors, and what do you attribute to that growth? So there's definitely a pre and post COVID response to this question, and there's also a geographical slash country specific answer to this question. So in high consumer markets, with more developed economies and a society that is arguably in part defined by its consumerism, USA, more of the Western European countries, what you'll see is actually there's a lot of like the consumer facing products. So a lot of that is in ag, so agriculture, right? So you'll start to see a lot more products that are not only organic, but they're also benefit corporation, or they're committing 1% for the planet. So a lot more consumer facing products, because consumers are demanding this. Now in economies that don't have as much wealth, and that focus on consumerism, you're seeing others, and it has rapidly changed because of COVID. Social enterprises have been absolutely devastated around the world. I say small business in general has, because of COVID. And so right now, the answer that I'm giving is different than I would have just 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Right now, where you see impact investment dollars and grant foundation dollars going is largely digital, ed tech, digital access. So how do we at scale educate and employ people when infrastructure doesn't allow it? So you're seeing a lot of innovation around there. You're seeing a lot of innovation around finance. How do we help people become banked and become more literate with financial policies? And then also ag tech, right? So how can if farmers are picking something and putting that into a value chain, how can we trace that it's come from them, both for safety reasons, but also for more fair pay and equity reasons, right? If we can better trace and track distribution of money along the value chain, then in theory we can become more fair and equitable along it. So you're seeing a massive investment and a lot of new innovations around tech. So agriculture tech, financial tech, fintech, and education tech, ed tech, and you know, they're also consumer facing, and some of these techs are also in all markets, not just those that are a little more disconnected, but we start to see those. Thank you, Yui. Yes, healthcare. I knew I was forgetting a very, very obvious one. Cool. So here's another one. Social enterprises need growth funding or growth fund strategy. One joke that we always talk about at Moving World is if you ask a social enterprise what they need, they say, you know, it's nothing, it's everything, but regardless, please send us money. Social enterprises are always trying to pursue funding for growth. And in the past, that has been, okay, let me go to accelerators and try and apply and get in and get money, or let me go to impact investors, or let me go to foundations. What we're seeing now, which I think is a really promising sign, although I do have some concerns about the power dynamics as well, is that you're seeing sustainability teams within companies investing in social enterprises. So they're almost saying, we don't need investors, we don't need accelerators, we ourselves. So as an example of this, Unilever has a program called Transform, which is actually in partnership with gosh, I forget if it's USAID or DIVID, which is uh, 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 the UK's Department of International Development. Um, where they are actually creating these partnerships and creating their own funding opportunities, or Timberland, who worked in Haiti with the Smallholder Farmers Alliance. So they're actually creating funding, and I think it's a really interesting indicator for social enterprises to say there are actually ways for us to fund our efforts by figuring out how to plug into value chains. There are less philanthropic dollars, especially because of COVID, to do that. However, there are more like corporate sustainability and actual business, like core business dollars. Um, you know, companies have to spend money on take Amazon. They have to spend money on boxes, right? They are looking for ways to make those more recyclable and lower cost. If social enterprises can help with that, and let's say they have a novel technology or access or can plug into the supply chain, there are people within Amazon who have nothing to do with sustainability whatsoever who are trying to solve that problem. And so we're actually seeing more funding opportunities come directly through partnerships. Actually, I was on a webinar myself right before this with a group called Resonance Global, who hosted a webinar with Cargill, USAID, and Unilever. Speaking about some of these cross-sector partnerships, and there's a great book on this topic by it's brand new by an author named Steve Schmida, who's the innovation officer at Resonance Global. That's called Partners for Purpose, Partnering with Purpose. Probably got that wrong. Sorry, Steve. But yeah, if you Google Resonance Global Partner with Purpose or Resonance Global Steve Schmida, you will find that. And if you can't, you can always email me and I can make a connection there. Any other questions? Any other stickies I missed? Cool. Well then, I'll go ahead then and say goodbye. I'll stop the recording, and yeah, I just want to say thank you for everybody for joining us. Appreciate your collaborations here on Mural, and thanks for being involved. There's a lot of work to do to recover from COVID. That goes without saying. There's a lot of inequities in society that need to get addressed, and appreciate you all taking time to think about how to do that and be a part of helping build a more equitable, just, and transparent world here. So great to see you all virtually, even if it was just your photos on the screen here, and hope to hear from you and stay in touch. Okay, recording is now stopped.